They say love is beautiful, but Machiavelli would smirk because what we call love is often just silent warfare dressed in perfume. You think you're in love. Look closer. You're negotiating territory. You're offering pieces of your soul in exchange for temporary safety. You're hoping that affection will shield you from rejection, from absence, from truth. But here's the part no one wants to say out loud. Most people don't love you. They love the way they feel when they're with you. And the moment that feeling changes, so does their loyalty. We romanticize love. But behind every I miss you is a need. Behind every forever is a condition. And behind every silent gaze is a silent calculation. Do I still benefit from being here? Machiavelli didn't write about love with flowers. He wrote about leverage, about advantage, about power that hides behind a smile. So ask yourself, has love made you stronger or has it weakened you quietly, beautifully? Because this world doesn't reward blind devotion. It rewards awareness. The kind of awareness that sees beneath the gestures. The kind that knows love is not sacred. Love is strategic. In every relationship, someone is setting the tempo. Someone is controlling the distance. And someone is afraid of being left. So, which one are you? If you've ever stayed silent just to be kept, if you've ever shrunk your truth to protect their comfort, comment below. I gave too much to be loved. This is not about fantasy. It's about clarity. The kind that hurts before it heals. So be warned. What you'll hear might destroy the version of love you once clung to, but it might also give you back your spine. You were told love is sacred, that humans are wired for connection, for loyalty, for soulmates. But let me ask you this. If love is so pure, why does it break people so often? Why do the same hands that once held your face with tenderness now scroll past your name like you never mattered? Machiavelli wouldn't be surprised because he understood something most people spend a lifetime avoiding. Human nature is not romantic. It is reactive. It is self-interested. It is built to survive, not to love unconditionally. The philosopher Schopenhauer said, "Compassion is illusion. Beneath it lies the will to power." Even our most tender moments are not free from motive. We listen to feel important. We give to feel needed. We stay to avoid facing our own emptiness. And the French thinker Pascal once said, "The heart has its reasons which reason does not know." But Machiavelli would counter, those reasons are usually leverage in disguise. You imagine yourself choosing your partners based on love. But what if deep down you've always been choosing based on safety, based on who made you feel valuable, seen, superior for a moment? Look around. Relationships fall apart, not from cruelty, but from instinct. When the benefit shifts, the loyalty dissolves. You don't fall out of love. You outgrow the illusion that they were ever yours to begin with. And they don't change. They simply stop performing the version of themselves that got them in the door. So here's the truth. People don't choose based on who you are. They choose based on how they feel when they're around you. And the second that changes, so do they still think love is pure? Comment. I confuse survival for affection. If you've ever been loved deeply until you stop being useful, because once you see human nature for what it is, not evil, but evolutionary, you stop bleeding for honesty and start building for strategy. You stop asking, why did they hurt me? And you start asking, what did I represent that no longer served them? That's not bitterness. That's power. And from here on, you don't love blindly. You love with your eyes open. Love isn't equal. It never was. And the people who suffer most in love are the ones who keep pretending that it should be. Because behind every I miss you is a balance sheet. Behind every I need you is a contract. Silent, invisible, but binding. Love is not a feeling. It's a power exchange. In every relationship, someone is the emotional investor, and someone is the one collecting interest. The currency, attention, affection, validation, control. And when the balance tips, so does the behavior. The one who waits loses. The one who hesitates gets overrun. The one who just wants clarity is already at a disadvantage. You've seen this play out. The one who texts first. The one who apologizes more. The one who fears loss more than they value themselves. That's the one who's not in love. They're in submission. Machiavelli saw this pattern not in bedrooms, but in royal courts. One advances, the other retreats. One gives affection, the other gives just enough ambiguity to stay in control. This isn't random. It's choreography, it's strategy, and it's happening in your relationships right now. So ask yourself, who defines a rhythm in your relationship? Who decides when it's time to talk, reconnect, withdraw? That person holds a throne. And if it's never you, you're not in love. You're in orbit. Here's the Machiavellian reality. Power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply responds slower. Sometimes it stays silent just long enough to make you question yourself. Sometimes it withholds touch. Not because it's cold, but because it knows your hunger. Love is never balanced. It's never 50-50. It's more like 60-40, it's maybe even worse. And the side that dares to withhold rules. So instead of asking, do they love me, start asking, what do they control? And more importantly, what did I give away without realizing it? Comment, I gave power disguised as love. If you've ever mistaken emotional imbalance for connection. Because once you understand that love is a power exchange, you stop overgiving, you stop chasing closure, and you stop waiting. You become the one who controls the tempo. And from that moment on, you love like a strategist, not a slave. You think attraction is natural. That chemistry just happens. That some people are just magnetic. But that's a lie. Sold to you by romance and reinforced by Instagram. Attraction isn't magic. It's strategy. Look closer. That pause before hitting send. That photo posted casually at midnight. That silence after a compliment. None of it is random. It's perception. Manipulation. Because attraction isn't about who you are. It's about what they believe you are, what they imagine you represent. The mystery, the distance, the way your silence makes them chase, the way your absence makes them remember. Machiavelli would never leave attraction to chance. He would design it. He'd understand that people aren't drawn to truth. They're drawn to tension, to danger, to the illusion of access that never fully arrives. Because in psychology of desire, what is certain becomes invisible, and what you can't fully becomes irresistible. You don't win hearts by being honest. You win by being unreadable, by letting them fill in the blanks with their fantasies, by never confirming or denying what you are, by becoming a mirror that reflects only what they hope to see. That's not deception. That's power. So, here's the real question. When someone feels drawn to you, was it truly you or your silhouette? Have you ever tested this? Pull back, go silent, remove the energy, watch how the dynamic shifts. Suddenly, the person who was so busy finds time. Suddenly, the one who held power leans in, because their addiction wasn't to you, it was to your unpredictability. Machiavelli said, "It is not enough to be, you must appear." In attraction, appearing powerful is often more influential than being sincere. So ask yourself, have you been trying to be real or trying to be remembered? Comment, they didn't fall for me. They fell for the version of me I let them see. Because once you realize that attraction is strategic, you stop over-explaining. You stop overexposing. You stop trying to be chosen. You let your silence do what your words never could. And that is how desire becomes control. They both call it love. But the battlefield is not the same. And neither are their weapons. Men love to conquer. Women love to secure. Men offer intensity. Women test for consistency. Machiavelli wouldn't speak of romance. He'd speak of tactics. And in the war of love, each side adapts to survive. Men love not just to be loved, but to feel powerful through that love. They chase what they can immediately possess, but lose interest once possession is complete. Women seek security not just to be chosen, but to feel protected emotionally and socially. They test boundaries not to destroy, but to measure depth. It's not about gender roles. It's about strategic psychology. The man loves fast but collapses under rejection. The woman loves cautiously but stores every red flag like evidence in a hidden drawer. The man plays offense. The woman builds defense. And both think the other play is unfair. But here's the cold truth. Both genders manipulate. They just use different currencies. He'll say what you want to hear to access your body. She'll show what you want to see to test your loyalty. He overpromises. She overanalyzes. He fears being insignificant. She fears being betrayed. It's not wrong, it's instinct. Because in love, everyone is guarding something. Men guard their ego. Women guard their trust. And neither wants to be the first to drop their sword. So ask yourself, have you been loving blindly, expecting them to feel like you do? Or have you learned their playbook and stopped blaming them for not playing by yours? Because Machiavelli would never complain that people love differently. He would study the difference and use it. Comment below. Men love with their pride. Women love with their memory. Or argue with it. That's where the truth lives. Once you understand how each side strategizes affection, you stop taking things personally and you start playing the long game. Not all love is strength. Sometimes it's surrender, but not the poetic kind. The kind where you disappear inside someone else and call it devotion. Machiavelli wouldn't call that love. He'd call it self-erasure. You think you're being loyal, but what you're really doing is trading your identity for affection. One compromise at a time. One silenced opinion. One missed workout. One unread message you pretend doesn't bother you. And suddenly, you're not you anymore. You're a soft echo of who you used to be, nodding, smiling, staying, not because it's right, but because you're afraid to lose what you've already overpaid for. That's not strength. That's emotional captivity. Machiavelli warned rulers to never put their fate in the hands of someone else's mercy. And yet, here you are, hoping that love will save you while it slowly owns you. You don't just give your time. You give your power. You give your peace. You give your ability to walk away. And once you can't leave, you're not in love anymore. You're in a prison with flowers on the walls. You justify it. They're just going through something. They don't mean it. They'll come back. But ask yourself, would you even recognize the person you were before all this loving began? Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt like you belonged to someone else? Comment. I forgot who I was to keep someone who forgot me. Machiavelli wouldn't cry for you. He'd study the loss and he'd warn you. Never invest more into a bond than you could survive losing. Because true strength in love is not in how much you give, but in what you refuse to give up. Your identity, your voice, your boundaries. When love asks you to bleed before it offers you a bandage, that's not love. That's control with a prettier name. And you were not made to vanish for someone else's comfort. Love is supposed to feel safe. But in reality, it's often where manipulation hides best. Not because people are evil, but because they're scared. Scared of being replaced. Scared of losing power. Scared of not matching anymore. And so they manipulate. Not with cruelty, but with silence, with sweetness, with subtle shifts in tone and timing. Machiavelli wouldn't call it betrayal. He'd call it strategy. Because when the stakes are emotional, the weapons are invisible. Let's break it down. There are 3 silent tactics that dominate modern love. What I call the triad of emotional control. 1, the withdrawal test. They pull back suddenly without warning, not to reflect, but to punish. They know their absence will echo inside your chest like a siren, and you'll chase it. You'll beg for clarity they never plan to give. They don't want resolution. They want confirmation that you still care more too. 2, the selective mirror. They reflect back only the parts of you that serve them. They compliment you when it benefits them. They ignore you when you ask for something inconvenient. They curate your identity like an Instagram filter. Be who I need or I go cold. And you adjust without realizing it. 3, the guilt loop. They make you feel responsible for their emotions. Your silence equals cruelty. Your boundaries equal abandonment. And suddenly, you're apologizing for protecting yourself. You become their emotional crutch while they keep both hands free. These tactics aren't accidental. They're calculated, often unconsciously, but real nonetheless. So ask yourself, have you ever felt like you were managing someone else's moods just to keep the peace? Have you ever changed your tone, your clothes, your truth, just to avoid another emotional landmine? Comment below, I thought I was loving, but I was being trained. Because manipulation in love doesn't feel like war. It feels like confusion, like blurred lines, like waiting for a message that never comes and convincing yourself they must just be busy. Machiavelli would never wait for that message. He'd read the silence like a map and walk away before the trap closed. So now you have to ask, are you still calling it love just because it hasn't destroyed you yet? You didn't stay because it was love. You stayed because it was noise and silence terrified you. You fear the empty bed, the untouched plate, the absence of a good morning text. Not because you needed them, but because they distracted you from confronting you. Machiavelli never feared silence, because silence reveals the truth, and most people would rather be mistreated than face it. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Many relationships aren't built on love. They're built on escape. Escape from loneliness, from insecurity, from the echo of your own thoughts in a room that no longer contains anyone but you. And that fear, it doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. But when left unchecked, it makes you settle, cling, shrink. Let's name it for what it is. There are 3 forms of emotional escape we mistake for love. 1, emotional noise. You don't love them. You love the distraction they provide. Their chaos, their stories, even their cruelty. It keeps your mind busy. And busy is safer than empty. 2, validation lease. You trade emotional rent for temporary security. You know they're wrong for you, but as long as they still want you, you feel like you exist. 3, fear-based fantasy. You create a story. They'll change. They just need time. But deep down, you know you're the one afraid to start over. And here's what Machiavelli would tell you. He who cannot be alone will serve any master who promises company. So ask yourself, are you in love or are you avoiding your own silence? Have you ever stared at your phone hoping they'd message? Not because you miss them, but because you didn't want to sit with the emptiness? Comment below. I stayed because silence scared me more than their absence. Because once you see how fear disguises itself as connection, you stop calling your captivity love, and you start doing the one thing most people never dare to do. You sit in the silence and meet yourself. And when you can do that, you become someone no one can use to escape themselves ever again. If Machiavelli loved you, you wouldn't even notice it at first, because he wouldn't chase, he wouldn't confess, he wouldn't call you his world. He would study you, measure your moves, and wait, because true love for him was never about surrender. It was about control, not in the abusive sense, but in the strategic sense. In love, as in politics, he would never place his happiness in someone else's hands. He would love like a ruler, with patience, with vision, with a long game in mind. Because for Machiavelli, emotions are valuable, but dangerous when they go unmanaged. So instead of asking, do they love me? He would ask, what are they willing to do for me? Without knowing why. Let's break down the 5 rules Machiavelli would follow if he ever loved. 1, never love desperately. Love should never become a weakness that can be used against you. If it starts feeling like hunger, step back. 2, control the pace. Always be the one who decides the rhythm. Pull forward, then power approach, then withdraw. Keep mystery alive because mystery equals power. 3, mirror, don't reveal. Let them think they know you. Let them build the fantasy, but never hand them the full blueprint of your soul. 4, preserve your identity. Never dissolve into someone else's life. Love doesn't mean becoming their shadow. It means standing tall beside them with your crown still on. 5, exit before your own. If the balance of power is lost and cannot be regained, leave silently, strategically, without drama. Because nothing ruins a reputation more than begging to stay. Machiavelli wouldn't write poetry. He'd write strategy. He wouldn't say, I love you 10 times a day. He'd make you wonder if he does. And in that wondering, you'd think about him more than anyone else. Comment, from now on, I love like a strategist. Because in the end, you were not born to be someone's piece. You were born to be someone's standard. And the only love worth having is the one where you remain fully in command of your mind, your emotions, and your exit. You spent years trying to be loved, softening your words, shrinking your anger, lowering your standards, smiling through disrespect, all in the name of keeping the peace. But here's the brutal truth. Love without respect is just emotional slavery. They don't need to hit you to own you. All they have to do is know that you won't walk away. Machiavelli never cared to be adored. Adoration fades. It bends with moods. it flips with whispers. But respect? Respect remains when love dies. You can't control whether someone loves you, but you can control whether they fear disappointing you, whether they hesitate before crossing you, whether your name burns in their memory. Not for how kind you were, but for how impossible you were to replace. So stop asking, do they love me? Start asking, do they respect me enough to be careful with me? Because love that costs your dignity isn't love. It's a transaction, one where you pay with silence and get nothing in return. Think back to the moment you first allowed something small, a tone, a lie, you let it slide, thinking love would fix it later. But Machiavelli would have told you, the moment you excuse a disrespect, you teach them how to treat you. So now make a decision. Don't be the one who explains, who begs, who stays. Be the one they remember because you vanished, without apology, without revenge, just distance and power. Comment below, I no longer want to be loved. I demand to be respected, because when respect becomes your boundary, you stop bleeding for attention. You stop negotiating for decency. You stop being afraid of walking away. And in that moment, you don't just win love, you win yourself back.